Welcome to Perino on Politics. This is where I call up my smart friends and find out what's on their minds about the state of American politics. And I've known Antonia, how long have we known each other?
Oh my goodness. Dana, if we were to say
25
we'd be
years?
revealing our age, we're not going to talk about our age.
Okay, but we've known each other for a long time. But
A long time.
sometimes for people that listen to this podcast like to know how we know each other. And so we go back to White House days for me, Senate days for you. Did you ever work on the House side?
I did. I worked for Mr. Boehner and Mr. Blunt at the end of the Bush administration, beginning of the Obama administration.
And then you went to the Senate side.
I went Senate, House, Senate.
Oh, okay. So you sandwiched.
I did. There was a House sandwich.
Where did you
there.
grow up? Remind me.
Lexington, Massachusetts, birthplace of American liberty.
Interesting, because were you always a Republican-leaning person?
Not at all.
Oh, what changed? What happened?
Well, when you grow up in someplace like a Boston suburb,
Yeah.
you don't really get a lot of ideological diversity there, shall we say. So it was really when I started going to college and I first moved to be sort of what would be old school term blue dog Democrat. And then I got out of college and it was just, no.
Oh, wait, can you explain to people what a blue dog Democrat is?
Oh, well, it's not even a thing anymore.
I know.
At the time, it was sort of a conservative Democrat. So, more economically conservative. But over time, when I finished college, I worked for a guy who worked for former Senator Dick Lugar. And he basically we had this conversation. He said, Antonia, you've got this like mental mind block on being a Republican because you grew up in Massachusetts. You got to let it go. And I said, yeah, you're right. And you're not going to agree with your party on everything. So there were probably some things back then I didn't agree with. But when I sort of looked at both parties on totem, I realized I was a Republican. So
I remember.
said, let's go in.
So I grew up in Wyoming, Colorado. And like you, I just thought everybody kind of thought like me. When I was growing up, there wasn't like a lot of ideological diversity, as you say. But I wanted to be a journalist, okay? So I thought that really didn't matter. I started working in journalism, and I thought, wow, this is biased. Holy cow. So fast forward, when I went to work on Capitol Hill, one of the first books I read in the mid-'90s was Peggy Noonan's book, What I Saw at the Revolution. Oh. And that was about her speech writing experience in the Reagan White House. I loved Ronald Reagan. And I remember reading that book and realizing, oh, so I'm not a freak that I actually have these ideas and feelings. It was so meaningful to me to read that book and highly encourage it for anybody out there who wants to get something for their children, especially girls, as they're trying to think about their politics. The great thing is that not only is it a wonderful book to read, hard copy, but a few years ago, Peggy Noonan went back and read the audiobook. So you get to hear her amazing, lovely voice if you prefer audiobooks. Yeah. Anyway, that's not exactly why I called you here today. You have gone on, you started your own business, and what kind of work do you like to do? What's your favorite go-to client type thing?
Well, right now, I'm super into defense, which there should be more women working in defense policy. I love many years ago, I worked for a woman senator from Maine who's no longer a senator, Olympia Snowe, and talk about media bias. One of the big three networks brought all the women senators together, and someone unfortunately dubbed them the Sweet 16, which was annoying. And this anchor, who shall remain nameless, said, if there were more women running countries, do you think there'd be less war? And God bless Susan Collins, senator from Maine, who said, I think women can be just as tough and strong on defense as men.
Wait, why aren't we naming the anchor?
Yeah. Should we name her?
Who was it?
Goodness, now I'm having ABC. Oh my goodness. Why am I having
Diane?
Yes.
Diane Sawyer. Okay, got it.
Yeah,
I understand that, but there are people who maybe that wasn't her own original thought. There have been people in the past that have thought that, but they forget about Golda Meir and Margaret Thatcher, for example.
Yep,
Or Catherine the Great, even though I'm not exactly sure how that turned out. Probably not good.
Probably not great. But yeah, we've had loads of strong women leaders over time, and we have strong women leaders now, as a matter of fact. But so right now I'm working with some American defense startups to try and bring them into Europe. God bless the Europeans. They are spending a lot more on defense. They've got a long way to go, but they're stepping up. They've agreed and pledged the 5% for NATO, which the president rightly called them to do. And so I'm trying to bring some American defense innovation in to Europe. One of my clients is a great startup called Deterrence. They are bringing robotics and advanced sort of computing into the production of munitions.
Yeah. It's a really interesting time to be in defense, and I'm glad that you are doing that. What's interesting, too, what we wanted to talk about in this first subject is sort of back to school.
Yep.
Both of us have worked in Washington and had these experiences. Neither of us have children, but we have so many friends that have children. And we are also really interested in the future of this country, and the dismal state of K through 12 education is something that's on my mind a lot, and we talk about it here. So we are back to school, and one of the things that's been interesting is talking about technology and phones in school. And Jonathan Haidt came on America's Newsroom last week, and he has some very strong feelings, but also some good results in the last year. As many states have banned phones in the classroom, it has opened up opportunities for people to actually learn, interact, better classroom behavior, etc. There are still some states that haven't done it yet. What are you hearing about this in Washington?
You know, it's a topic that is increasingly happening. And look, all the parents out there, they had to, because of COVID, had to move on to sort of online learning. But I think most parents want normalcy and they want their kids to learn. And they're seeing that increasingly phones are a problem to that. It's a problem. So I think there are a lot of lawmakers who are trying to figure out how best to do this. I mean, there's got to be a balance because traditionally in the United States, education is a local question, and it should be, right? We want our education as close to the parents as possible. And I think we saw in COVID when it gets away from parents, bad things happen. But I think that this is a huge topic and discussion point. A good friend of mine, John Cusey, recently left the American Enterprise Institute to go work at an organization. This is its mission, to really deal with phones in education and trying to sort of turn them off. So I think there's a real movement to get phones out of schools, how to do it best. But, you know, Dana, I started thinking a lot about, you mentioned President Reagan earlier. It's not just about phones. It's, kids have to be outside. It's some of the fundamentals are still just the fundamentals.
Actually, Jonathan had a piece last week in the Atlantic, or he talked about this piece, in which they asked children, what do you want most? And they said, time for free play. To mean, like, let us just go outside, let us go to the park. There was also some very interesting statistics in the piece about parents being very worried that if they do let their kids go to the park, that they're going to be abducted. And then he showed the statistics of the chances of being abducted, and the incredible, like it's the chances of it are just so slim. But also, I don't want any kid to be abducted. I get it.
Of course not.
But free play and being able to just go outside and do things and have that independence, and maybe there is some solidarity in numbers, as if parents have more people also not allowing their children to have phones and getting them outside, that could also work well. Do you think that technology and phones should be banned from the Senate floor?
Oh, you know what? That's a really, really interesting question. Yeah, I do. I think we should get rid of...
Make them talk to each other, independent thinking, free play.
Yes, free play. I think there would be a lot better in society if we stopped using phones. And look, there's a lot of potential that's good from AI. But I actually called a friend of mine this morning whose kids are going back to school, and he said he was even more provocative. He said, let me say this, he thinks all electronics, even taking notes on computers, he thinks all of it should be banned.
Wow.
And he said his kids, they don't know how to spell, they're barely reading, he's struggling writing. He thinks all of it should go.
But let me ask you something, like for your companies, like the robotics company, that and that's going to be a growing industry for a long time. Yeah. So kids today might want to work in that. Will they be able to do that if they're not learning along the way with the technology as it's developing?
I think that's the counterpoint, right? There are so many sides and facets to this. Maybe that goes just into sort of computer science classes or things like that. But if we know there's enough data out there to know that AI is a problem for people thinking for themselves, or it can be. I use AI. I'm sure you do. Everyone uses AI and should.
I don't really know how. I'm going to be very honest. Like, I can ask ChatGPT for like something, but I never ask it to write something for me because I'm kind of afraid. It's sort of like why I never did any drugs. I was afraid I'd get addicted. And I don't want an easy way out. So I'm self-disciplined that way. And I realize I might need to use it at some point in order to keep a job. But does that make sense?
It does, but that you're not substituting your critical thinking with AI. It can be great to use think for invoices, for example, or if you need to figure out like what are the best, like my mother's going through, we need to put her in sort of senior care.
Okay.
What are the best facilities and stuff like that? It can make research and doing mundane tasks easier. But if it's substituting for critical thinking, and that's what we're getting to, I think, with all of this from phones and technology and, kids not being outside, is the ability to critical think. And if we're using AI or phones to substitute for that, that's a real problem. We want kids to be able to think for themselves, to act for themselves. Mm-hmm. Reading is down, which is horrific and bad. So I think we're sort of at the crux of how do you use technology? How is it best? It shouldn't be distracting. It shouldn't substitute for thinking. And if it's impeding a child's actual learning, then we've got a problem here. So I think this is a big societal question. And I think Washington and policymakers have a place to be here. But obviously, this starts at home with parents,
Did you see that big announcement today that there's going to be an AI super PAC that will go against any sort of big regulation of AI? Yeah. Look it up. I mean, it's very interesting. Okay. There's going to be some big legislative pushes. Washington's always behind when it comes to technology.
Always.
I have one more question for you in this segment, and then we'll take a quick break. And that is that I think you and I both benefited so greatly from having our time on Capitol Hill and working for great bosses, meeting good people, and being able to call up somebody I've known for 20 years and say, can you be on my podcast? For people who think they would like to work on Capitol Hill, or their children, niece, nephew, granddaughter, whoever wants to work on Capitol Hill, in your opinion, what is the best way to go about that today?
It's actually, in the total counter to AI and technology, it is, if you're from a state or someone's district, go in, you're a state, they represent you, so go in that way.
Like physically into the office?
Yeah, why not? Go in, give your resume.
Could you go into the district office as well? You don't have to go to D.C.?
Absolutely. And they want kids from their students from their state or their district. It's good for them to have that. So I think making a phone call, sending an email, going into the office, being from someone's state or district is really good. And having kids that will say, I'll do whatever it takes. Mm-hmm. When I was at the Georgetown Institute of Politics, there were a lot of students that would come in and say, well, I want to be the lead trade counsel on the Ways and Means Committee. And I said, that's great, but you're going to have to...
That guy has 25 years experience, right?
Yes. You got to start with the basics.
Yeah. And I highly recommend people get Capitol Hill experience. I don't care what you want to do in your life. It will help you. And the best thing is you make a lot of great friends. Question for you. You are living outside of the District of Columbia right now in a smaller town in Virginia. You used to live in Washington, D.C. So did I. President Trump has had the crime crackdown. We're in our third week now, just finished the second week. He's claiming ultimate success. Obviously, I think there's probably a ways to go. How do you feel about all of this happening? And do you think Congress will extend him the opportunity to continue this beyond the first 30 days?
Let's start with the last question first. I think they will.
Oh, really?
I do. I mean, maybe the Democrats won't want to, but I think they will, and they should. The District of Columbia has been a mess for a long time. Look, I haven't been into the city since the troops were deployed, but it was a mess. I got sick and tired of walking home during sunlight hours and having police line up in areas you just shouldn't, where you had kids that were like on mopeds, carjackings, it was just horrible. And look, the city's got a lot of issues to work through. So, you know what? I was thinking about this. Remember Rudy Giuliani back in the 80s? And he did this approach to New York City where it was cracking down on things like graffiti, on the smaller crimes, that really led to a broader sort of crackdown on crime writ large. So I know it's, in a lot of ways, I wish it didn't have to come to our National Guard being in D.C. But at the end of the day, I think that it's completely fair and reasonable to think that America's capital city is safe. And that people, when they come there, when we have people from out of the country come to Washington and they think, what in the world is happening here? When, a block or two from the White House, you have parks that are filled with homeless. I feel very sorry for those people. I do. But they should not be there. It's not okay.
What do you think about expanding it to cities like Chicago or Baltimore?
Ooh, well, this is one of those things where it gets a little more dicey because the president has more authority over the District of Columbia just because what it is. It's not a state. I think if he's putting pressure on these cities to take more drastic action to make them safer, good on him.
Maybe it'll work, yeah.
Maybe it'll work. I get a little uncomfortable with deploying our military in domestic circumstances, truth be told. But at the end of the day, Chicago's been a mess for a long time. And I hear a lot of Democrats say, look, our crime rates are down from what they were a couple of years ago. It's still not enough.
I know.
It's just not enough.
Sometimes I feel like Democrats just try to kill everybody with statistics. And if it's down from a high, it's still too high.
Yeah, it is still too high.
Yeah.
And look, it is one of those things when you talk to Europeans who come to America, for years they'd say they're worried about walking around in American cities. And I was in San Francisco a few years ago. Disaster. It felt like the city was just filled with druggy zombie overlords. It's terrible.
But I hear it's getting a little better with the new mayor.
I hope so. I think there is some sanity coming back to San Francisco. But look, at the end of the day, I'm always a little uncomfortable with federal troops going into our cities. But we got to do something here. And I think the American people want law and order on their streets.
They do. It's the basics of security.
Everything. That's exactly.
So I mentioned that Congress has to take a vote. I mentioned that Congress has to take a vote in order to extend the National Guard in D.C. But the other thing I didn't realize until we were texting over the weekend is that when Congress comes back, they have to do another funding bill. And is there another funding shutdown possibility? How does this keep happening?
Well, it's the end of the year. It's the end of the fiscal year, September 30th.
Okay.
And so they've got to fund the government. So they're, kids are going back to school.
So the one big, beautiful bill did not do that?
No, it did not. It dealt with the debt limit. This is actually just funding the government through the appropriations process. So yeah, by the end of the month, they've got to extend government funding. The challenge is going to be whether Democrats are going to be on board because the Senate is a curious place with curious rules. And Senator Thune, the majority leader, is going to need 7 Democrats to join him and Republicans to extend funding. The Democrats are in a bit of a sticky wicket, as they always are. They're just angry. They've got full-on Trump derangement syndrome. And Senator Schumer, in the winter, he voted to extend government funding and got crushed by the left-wing base. At the end of the day, they should just deal with it, fund the government, and move on. Yeah. I mean, this is ridiculous. And if Democrats want to die on their sword over this, I just don't think the American people.
Do you think that they would maybe just say, let's just get this over with?
They should.
And move on.
They should.
But what do you think the Democrats will run on then in the midterms? Is it just going to be anti-Trump? Maybe.
Could be. Could very well be. I mean, they're a mess. It's, there was this Third Way put out. Tanya, did you see this?
Go ahead. Explain it to everybody. Yeah.
So Third Way is this Third Way organization. They put out a list of words for Democrats not to use. And it was funny. I was looking at some of the words. I called a conservative friend of mine. I said, I don't even know what some of these words mean. And he said, well, that's
the problem. It was all like woke words and things like that.
Yes. And it's just like they can't even figure out how to talk.
But I thought it was interesting that you had to have a memo about that because, as Greg Gutfeld and I always say, if you just watch The Five, we've been saying this for years. It's free. You don't have to pay for a consultant to write you this memo.
It's also not that hard. It's really not that hard. Most people just want people to talk like normal people. And if they have to put out a lexicon of the words to say or not to say,
I know.
Then they've got bigger issues here.
That's so
Whether
weird.
or not they can say, this is not that hard, but it's very hard for them. I don't understand why this is so difficult. But then again, if you look at the where Republicans are succeeding in terms of registered Republicans versus Democrats. D's have a long way to go, but who knows? Maybe being anti-Trump will be enough. I don't think so.
It doesn't feel like it. And they're
we'll
also,
see.
they have very little money.
Very little money, very little enthusiasm.
This is where I'd like to ask my smart friends, what are you paying attention to that I might be missing? What's on your radar? Anything cool that you've seen or something smart that you want to make sure I know about?
So I doing a lot of defense related stuff. There is a company in Ukraine. It's women run, or a woman is running it. They have just come out with last week a ballistic missile called the Flamingo, which is ridiculous, but there was a little error at the beginning. It was painted pink. This is the first ballistic missile the Ukrainians have done. It can go thousands of miles into Russian territory. And you know what? I think it's kind of awesome. I think it's kind of badass that this is a woman-run company with the first Ukrainian ballistic missile. So I think that's pretty incredible. And also another thing, sticking with Ukraine, the First Lady.
Yeah.
She's really doing an incredible job highlighting what the Russians are doing in terms of kidnapping and abducting Ukrainian children. She is a force, that woman. She sent a letter to President Putin about Ukrainian children. Yeah. And this is an issue that a lot of church-going Americans have been weighing in with the White House on. I think it's an incredible issue. So there are a lot of women who are doing a lot of really cool things in terms of pushing back on Russia. So I want to say bravo to the First Lady and to the producers of the Flamingo ballistic missile in
That's
Ukraine.
cool. I'm going to check it out. You sent me a link. And I agree. I mentioned that last week about Melania Trump. She's kind of a quiet, picks her moments type of person, which can be very, very effective. Well, Antonia, thank you so much for being on Perino on Politics.
Dan.
Where can people find more about En Avant Strategies?
It means forward in French. It's En Avant, ENAVANT strategies.com.
I love it. Thank you so much. Great to have you.
Thanks, Dana. Be well.